I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. This is a historic day in the city of Portland, and I know a bunch of you don't live in the city. That's all right. As the economic engine for Oregon and some of Southwest Washington, this is still worth paying attention to. Today is the day the city soft launched its new government structure. Who the players are and what it means for the future, that is our big story tonight. Portland City Administrator Michael Jordan sent emails to employees today, and the big one says, today we officially launch the 6-month countdown to a new to Portland form of government and take a crucial step in preparing for this historic change. It's historic because Portland has run its government one way for more than 100 years, and that changed this morning. Instead of having elected politicians involved in running the day-to-day workings of the Bureau and the departments, which, kind of led to silos and a lack of cooperation outside of their little bubble, well, now they are out of the mix, pretty much hands off. Instead, Mayor Ted Wheeler has taken control of all the bureaus and departments, grouped them into 6 main categories, and put similar bureaus and programs together there. Each of those 6 will report to a deputy city administrator who reports up to Michael Jordan at the top, and then Jordan still reports to Wheeler. That is what Portland city government officially will look like on January 1st, so Jordan convinced city leaders to start experimenting now, 6 months early, to work out the problems. Last week, Shoshana Oppenheim, the transition project manager for the city, explained the goal of starting the experiment early.
Our North Star for this project is setting the incoming elected officials and administration up for success. That we can build a culture of continuous improvement, and that they will have the opportunity to make the next round of improvements to the city operations.
Now, as part of the change, the administrator, Michael Jordan, announced today that Annie Von Berg is now the interim assistant city administrator. She will also oversee 4 programs, including Portland Solutions, which is designed to focus on the homeless issue. Von Berg worked for the Bureau of Environmental Services and led the city efforts to clean up the Willamette River for the last 9 years. The city had already announced the 6 deputy administrators who will focus on the 6 general areas. Here they are holding a sign for their area. From vibrant communities to public works and budget and finance, city operations, public safety and community and economic development. That's the administrator, Michael Jordan, there in the middle.
This is my 40th year in public life, and I can't imagine a better way to finish a career than to be able to be a part of what I consider to be maybe the biggest governmental transformation in the state's history, not just the city's history. And so it's an incredible honor to be able to fill this role even on an interim basis. It's been said the goal is pretty simple. Our job is to deliver an effective operating government to a new set of elected officials on January 1st of 2025. It sounds simple. Achieving that is a little more complicated. There are a lot of moving parts. It's a big organization, and I am here today to welcome some partners in doing that.
He was talking about those new deputy city administrators. We thought it would be interesting for you to briefly get to meet them. They all come from inside local government, and only one, Jonas Beery, has worked recently in the private sector. Okay, here we go, starting with Jonas.
I'm Jonas Beery, the city's Deputy Chief Administrator for Budget and Finance and the city's Chief Financial Officer. The Budget and Finance service area includes teams of centralized business professionals that provide citywide enterprise financial services, support, and policy direction.
My name is Sarah Morrissey, and starting July, I will serve as the interim Deputy City Administrator entrusted with overseeing the City Operations Service Area. I like to think of city operations as the backbone of this organization, and we are providing essential services to every bureau across the city to ensure they are able to deliver programs and services all Portlanders rely on.
My name is Mike Myers. I am the new interim director, new interim deputy city administrator over the public safety service area. This is my 38th year in public safety, having begun my time in Las Vegas, Nevada as the fire chief there before coming to Portland as your fire chief and also your emergency manager. I have a strong background in managing complex 911 centers and have worked closely with law enforcement partners for my entire career.
Okay, so there are the first three: budget and finance, city operations, and public safety, which includes police and fire. Here are the other three.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Sonia Szymanski, Deputy City Administrator for the Vibrant Communities Service Area, which includes the city's new Office of Arts and Culture, the Portland Children's Levy, Portland Parks and Recreation, and a support services team as the engine at its core. So much of what brings people to Portland to visit or to live and keeps them here, keeps us here, is in the spaces and the connections made possible by this service area.
My name is Donnie Oliveira, and it's my honor to serve the City of Portland as the Deputy City Administrator for the Community and Economic Development Service Area, a service area which aligns programs focused on building prosperity for all of Portland.
I'm Priyadana Paul, and I'm honored to be the first Deputy City Administrator for Public Works here in Portland. What a privilege to be a part of this new and exciting era for the city. The community has been my home for many, many years, and our neighborhoods, the culture, and the unique characteristics that make Portland has shaped my journey as a first-generation immigrant, as a woman, as an engineer, as a mother, and a dedicated public servant.
So there you go. Those are the folks now running the City of Portland as of today, along with their boss, Michael Jordan, and his assistant administrator, Annie Von Berg, all of whom report to Mayor Wheeler. By the way, they are all interim and can be replaced by whoever becomes the new city administrator in 2025. This group was picked by the elected city council members or the mayor. Along with that soft launch of the city's new government, today is also the first day that Portland is supposed to be enforcing its camping ban. It allows the city to fine or jail homeless people who refuse shelter only if there is shelter available right then for that person. Camping is completely banned in places like sidewalks, and fires and gas heaters are banned as well, and personal belongings have to be within 2 feet of a tent, meaning no sprawling encampments are allowed. The punishments include a fine of up to $100 and or 7 days in jail. Now, when I sat down with Mayor Ted Wheeler from Portland last week, he was rather confident in how this would all be enforced.
If you refuse to comply after you've been offered carrot after carrot after carrot, in comes the stick, and the stick is a fine or a jail term or both.
All right, he was confident then. Let's bring in Blair Best now. She covers homelessness for us. And Blair, what did you see and hear on the streets today?
Well, you know, Pat, it was somewhat of a frustrating day, to be honest. This camping ban has been months in the making. It's arguably one of the harshest penalties against homelessness that Portland has seen so far. So one might think that the city police, even those outreach workers, would want to talk about it and talk about their efforts, seeing as this is day one of enforcement, but that couldn't be farther from what we found today. The community, they want answers. Homeless people want answers, and we tried getting those. You know, seeing as shelter, this whole thing hinges on the number of available shelter beds, we really wanted to know how many shelter beds are available, and we couldn't get that answer. We also wanted to know what happens after someone goes to jail, but turns out, we found out today that essentially jail time is not likely given the limited resources. And as for those outreach workers, we're learning they hold much of the decision-making power here. It's up to them if and when police are called to a camp. And they were also unavailable today.
So a lot of questions, not very many answers. What do we know about police? Were they called to any camps today?
So the short answer is no, but we were told that the mayor will give us an update on enforcement efforts sometime next week.
All right, and what happens to jail time and fines that the mayor has been talking about?
Right, so what we're learning is that there are limited resources in the shelters, at the jails, even at the police bureau, and it's really restricting the city's enforcement efforts. So basically what will happen is instead of getting arrested, someone will be cited and given a court date, or they could also be fined. But look, we watched how that happened with Measure 110, and people rarely pay those fines. They rarely even show up to court. You know, we talked with a young homeless couple today along the I-205 bike path, and they said these penalties were no incentive for them.
Well, if I can't go there with my dog, I'm gonna say no. And I guess I'm gonna have to go to jail either way, because I'm not gonna give up my dog because it's something that they want.
Yeah. What do you think about that? If you were to be offered shelter and you were to say no, they could put you in jail.
It wouldn't be the first time. I don't want to be in this predicament, you know what I'm saying? But
I don't want to be here just as much as nobody else wants us here.
I don't really have a say.
What does that feel like?
Honestly.
Yeah.
It makes me hate humanity. So it just makes me hate people.
Well, all right, Blair. So they said they would only go to the shelter if they could bring their dog, but we know the city doesn't have enough shelter, so surely they can't accommodate everyone's specific and unique requirements, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know, an outreach worker once told me you can't be desperate and have demands, and we see that all the time on the streets. But the city today says they have access to about 860 shelter beds, but it's unclear how many of those were available today. Although the mayor's office says that if someone is serious about getting into shelter, they can almost always get them in. And again, we are expected to hear from the mayor on all these enforcement efforts in an update sometime next week.
All right, thanks, Blair. Appreciate it. All right, now here's my opinion on all this. It's a new day in the city of Portland. Police can begin enforcing a camping ban, which might ease the many problems people living near these homeless camps now encounter, although it does sound like it's a painfully slow rollout of the program. But, you know, at least it's coming. In addition to that, the city of Portland changed its structure today to be more efficient and more responsive to citizens. I think that's good on both terms. It's good moves. Hopefully it'll work as intended. And if it doesn't, then I think that we all expect there's going to be adjustments, but the adjustments will be done with a priority of keeping an eye on the goal of making the city more livable for the many and not just comfortable for the few. Which has me thinking about the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. It's the top of the food chain for law enforcement in our county, and the district attorney is the person who runs that office and sets policy on what will be a priority and what can, you know, sort of be ignored. So this guy, Mike Schmidt, current district attorney, he lost the election. He will serve one term and then be gone at the end of this year. He's made it clear that he's someone who thinks the justice system needs reforming, and he may be right. But 6 months from now, he will be gone. And in the meantime, it appears that Schmidt is committed to freezing out the man who beat him in the election, a veteran prosecutor from his own office, Nathan Vasquez. He tried to keep Vasquez off the committee that is now forming Multnomah County's deflection program. Only outside pressure got the county chair to invite Vasquez in to help shape something that he will have to live with for 4 years or maybe even more. And internally, Schmidt wants to act as if the election did not happen. He sent this email to Vasquez and some of the top office staff, warning him not to start planning his transition. You are not to engage in transition meetings with anyone in the office on county time unless specifically sanctioned and authorized by me. Well, that sounds chummy, doesn't it? No. Schmidt said he would have members of his executive team start to brief Vasquez in September, but why wait 2 more months? If you really want to make a smooth transition, which you mentioned later in that email to Vasquez, you should allow him to start planning now. What if Vasquez is planning to make changes with the executive team that's there now? Shouldn't those people be able to have a heads up as well? I think so. And what about some of the new laws coming into play here? Will Schmidt help enforce the city's new camping ban? I wonder about the same thing with the deflection program when drugs are recriminalized. Will Schmidt enforce consequences there? Who knows? I think as we begin to clean up our city and our county, those are serious questions, though. And I believe the current district attorney should tell all of us where he stands on those 2 programs. And I believe he should not stand in the way of the future. Either publicly commit to support those programs and enforce those new laws, or step down. And it's time to embrace change and the transition with Vasquez as well, or step down. Our area has had enough challenges these past few years. We don't need a soon-to-be-gone district attorney standing in the way. It's time for Mike Schmidt to make a decision. Get with the program or get out of the way and let Nathan Vasquez lead. That's my opinion anyway, and you don't have to agree with me. A lot of times you don't, but I'd love it if you'd communicate. What are your thoughts on DA Mike Schmidt? Should he resign, or are you okay with him serving out the end of his term? Send us an email, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. Up next on The Story, Oregon's signature program to combat climate change was thrown out last year over what some are calling a technicality. So the process to get it up and running started all over again. And it's not exactly smooth sailing, but it is moving. Environmental reporter Cale Williams brings us an update on a recent milestone when The Story returns. It's been more than 6 months since an Oregon appeals court shut down the state's biggest program to fight climate change. It's called the Climate Protection Program. Well, it's now back, and last week the group charged with coming up with the rules for the program hit a big milestone. Environmental reporter Cale Williams has the story.
Stop me if you've heard this one before. Oregon is getting ready to enact an expansive set of climate regulations aimed at drastically cutting the state's greenhouse gas emissions. If that sounds familiar, it should. This is the second time the state is working to craft rules to drastically cut climate warming gases in the state. The Climate Protection Program was invalidated by an Oregon appeals court last year over a technical error. Since then, the state has been working to get it re-implemented. Nora Apter is director of programs with the Oregon Environmental Council, and she said time is of the essence.
We have unfortunately lost years due to the invalidation of the Climate Protection Program. It is vital that the CPP is restored as soon as possible.
The overarching goal of the program is to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2035 and by 90% by 2050. It'll do so by implementing a cap on emissions for certain businesses and utilities that lowers over time. Apter is one of more than 24 folks on the Rulemaking Advisory Committee, which helps the state determine how the program will work. The committee also includes representatives from environmental justice organizations, business groups, and some of the same utilities that sued to have the program invalidated in the first place. That can make for some interesting dynamics.
We are advocating for a program and hoping to maintain the integrity of this really cornerstone climate justice policy at the same time as parties in the room are fighting to weaken it.
But despite the potential for conflict, some folks said the process is actually going a little smoother the second time around. Chris McCabe is the executive director of the Northwest Pulp and Paper Association.
I think the agency has really done a good job rolling up its sleeves and listening to some of the concerns that were not, in my view, adequately addressed during the first CPP rule.
There are, of course, still some sticking points. In a statement to KGW, the region's largest gas utility, Northwest Natural, said they had concerns about the program's costs, whether it was viable, and how much it'll actually cut emissions. It's our position that if DEQ moves forward with this program, there are changes that must be made to protect Oregonians. For McCabe, the paper mills he represents are worried that complying with emissions restrictions could put their businesses at a disadvantage.
If the mills in Oregon are straddled with too many costs, they're not going to be able to produce a competitive product, whatever it is that they make.
If those businesses choose to move their operations to somewhere with weaker environmental regulations,
we're going to see a net increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and that's exactly opposite of what we would like to see.
The new rules do include some mechanisms to lighten that burden, though. Some businesses that compete with other regions will have less stringent caps, and there are credits that can be purchased called Community Climate Investments, or CCIs. The proceeds from those credits would go towards things like community solar projects and programs that provide heat pumps to low-income folks. Citlali Torres is the Air Quality and Climate Program Coordinator at Verde. She noted that people helped by those kinds of programs often suffer the worst consequences of climate change.
There's tons of reasons to be focused on making sure that investments are going to people who are hit first and worst and on the front lines of feeling these impacts.
The cost of those credits, starting around $130 per metric ton of greenhouse gas emissions, are still too high for many on the industry side. But Apter said that recent investments from the federal government will soften the financial blow as the state works to transition away from fossil fuels. And from Apter's perspective, the benefits will be well worth it.
We have seen time and time again industry painting a picture of a scary, expensive future. And that is not the reality. But what they don't want people to know is that the transition to clean energy is going to be cheaper and healthier for everyone.
After some final tweaks, the proposed rules should be released to the public in the next few weeks. That'll be followed by a public comment period, then a hearing with a vote on the rules expected by the end of the year. Cale Williams, KGW News.
Fascinating stuff. There's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the program and its impacts. What does Northwest Natural mean by changes to protect Oregonians? Rate increases? And when it comes to those CCI costs for companies, will they fight any cost? And would those costs be passed on to you, the consumer? I don't know. It's a lot to figure out. So this is obviously a story that Kale and the team will continue to follow. Stay with us. We're back right after this. Oregon's minimum wage is going up by 50 cents an hour today across all levels. $14.70 is the new standard minimum wage in the state. It's a little lower in some rural areas at $13.70, a little higher in the Portland area at $15.95 an hour. And in case you missed it, it's been 1 week since around 100 Portland police officers started wearing body cams. PPB was the last major metropolitan department in the country to deploy the technology. Certain situations will make the cameras automatically record, including when officers draw their guns, grab their taser, or activate the sirens and lights. It's a layer of accountability the community has been waiting years for.
It's a good thing that is happening now, at least, but it really could have happened way before this.
I think it's a really good idea because it protects both the public and the police.
Last week, officers at Central Precinct started using them. Later this month, it will be North Precinct's turn, and after that, officers in East Precinct. We asked PPB about releasing body cam footage after things like police shootings. They say they intend to release that footage in the interest of transparency, but they're still working to figure out what that process will look like. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thank you so much for watching. But remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. By the way, we do have a programming note for you. We will not have a show on Thursday this week because it's the 4th of July, but we will be back with you on Friday. In the meantime, enjoy your Monday night, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.